Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts and other things they're involved in. My guest today, a global youth development specialist, has embraced challenges and overcome social and economic obstacles to become an expert in the youth development field and the dedicated role model that he is today. Domestic violence, homelessness, gang violence, and bullying shaped his future in an amazing and most unexpected way. As a child, he and his family suffered great tragedies due to domestic violence. The deaths and near deaths of 12 family members became a motivating factor for him growing up. He opened the I Am Defense Institute to honor his loved ones. He has taught martial arts in the last 20 years and has several successful after-school programs in the Atlanta area. He's been called the Tony Robbins of Youth Development. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Shaun Banks. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Brian, I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm doing good. I appreciate your time. I know it's been, we've been trying to schedule it for a few weeks and we both have kind of busy schedules. So I'm glad we finally worked it out.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I'm happy we did. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Well, how we kick it off with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know kind of what led to that first spark, that very first interest in martial arts that kicked off your journey.
Wow. Okay. Well, it started for me with my mom, actually. As a kid, we lived in inner city Seattle. And so at the time, gang violence was really bad. And actually, crack had been, recently introduced into the inner city. So I remember what it was like before crack hit the inner city and what it was like after crack hit the inner city. Before crack hit the inner city, you could be outside, you could play. I mean, there was really no serious gang violence going on. There really wasn't a lot of crime in the inner city. You'd have a simple, robber or something like that, but nothing as violent as what happened after crack hit the inner city. And so once crack came, everything changed. You couldn't stay outside like you used to. I mean, this gang violence was crazy. And so what my mom did was she wanted me to have a different kind of influence in my life. I mean, just growing up in the city, single parent household. So she put me into a Taekwondo program at the Boys and Girls Club. Nice. Right down the street from our house. And that's how it started. I was about 6 years old. And she said, you know what? You're going to the Boys and Girls Club. You're going to be around some good, positive people. And that's how it started. And then from there, at first I thought I was going to be like, how you see in the karate movies, right? You're instantly like flipping and jumping and flying through the air.
Yep.
And none of that happened. So I didn't like it. But she made me stick with it because of the discipline and, and everything that comes with it. So from there, it lit a spark. And so then I went from Taekwondo, and then there was a Hungar Kung Fu program that was in Chinatown and downtown Seattle. And there was a martial arts supply store at the bottom of that. And so every time I'd get to go, and my mother used to love to go to this Chinese restaurant called Thai Tung, which is right across the street. And so we would go to Thai Tung, and then she let me go to this store. And then I started going to this other martial arts school. So I just fell in love with it as a kid. But it started from my mom.
Okay. So do you remember, first of all, how long were you in that Taekwondo school? And do you remember like which style of Taekwondo, which system, which Kwan it was?
I actually do not.
Okay.
I wasn't there because I went from there maybe about a year. I mean, I was 6 years old. So,
okay.
I don't really remember what if it was like American Taekwondo or just World Taekwondo Federation. I don't remember. But I remember being there, and I remember my instructor, and I remember the one thing I remember about him, two things. I remember watching him demo fighting against multiple attackers, right, as a kid, right? Mm. And I remember seeing that, and I remember the smile that he had. And he had just the warmest, coolest smile. So it's interesting to see a guy that could like beat up all these people at one time, but which just had the warmest, most gentle heart. And so that actually is what kind of created the foundation for me as I started teaching as I got older, was just remembering that gentleman and his smile. But I
Nice.
went from there and I went into Hungar Kung Fu was actually where I started really getting into it because I was a little older
Okay.
after that, and was, had a little bit more discipline and willingness to stick with it.
Okay. And I definitely want to get a little more into Hungar. One more question on the Taekwondo. And that year you were doing it, did you ever get into the competition side of things?
No, at that age, no, I didn't. I mean,
Okay.
it was more about, man, just going to the Boys and Girls Club and getting into the, just actually doing it and getting the exposure to it. I'm not even sure if they had a competition level at the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, it's possible that they did,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I wouldn't have. At that age, I wouldn't have gotten into that, especially the situation.
Yeah.
That wasn't what I was there for.
Okay, cool. So then Hungar, it was right near this martial arts school and this martial arts store and everything that you were going to. What was it that what was it about Hungar that drew you in? I mean, I know a little bit about the style. I've interviewed a few people who have done it, but I don't know a lot. So what was it about it that really kind of connected with you?
What connected with me as far as Hungar Kung Fu really was just the fact that it was just a different style. As a kid, I mean, I was just into anything that had to do with martial arts and kicking and punching and anything. So it was just the fact that it was different for me is what got me into it. I wanted to try and look at all kind of different martial arts, and that just kind of lit my fire. And so it was right above the martial arts store that I would go to all the time as a kid. So I said, oh, okay, Mama, I want to try this and I want to try something different. And so she let me do it. And so I tried Hungar Kung Fu for a while. And I mean, when I say for a while, I mean, as a kid, I mean, maybe a year or two. I mean, it was just, and then from there, I mean, I went on to something else. And so I just had an opportunity to have a lot of exposure, to different arts.
So what are some of the things you remember about them? I'm just curious about that. 'Cause I grew up in a town. We never had a martial arts store. If I wanted anything martial, and we had a sporting goods store that, maybe had like some throwing stars or something like that. When I was a kid, that they probably sold us when they shouldn't have as 10 years old, selling a throwing star. Right. But I'm just, what are some of the things they had in there and some of the things that you'd buy at that age?
Oh man, they had like the blow darts, right? Like the blow darts, ninja stars. Nunchucks. I mean, you'd have like just like the ball and chains. You'd have the grappling hooks. You'd have like the bear claws, like the climbing claws. I mean, everything was in this store. I mean, it was a big time when like Sho Kosugi was big with like Revenge of the Ninja and Return of the Ninja, all those movies. And so they'd have all his posters in there. And then, of course, just being down in Chinatown, you'd have a lot of Bruce Lee stuff. And then Bruce Lee was buried in Seattle. So there's just a big connection there. So there's all kind of Bruce Lee stuff there. And I mean, all kind of staffs and Bokens and just all kind of stuff was in this store. And as a kid, it was just like, that was my toy store, right? Going to somewhere like that was just like, it was like, wow. And my mom, so the trade-off was, as long as I did well in school, I get good grades in school, she would let me get this stuff. So by this time, we had moved out of the inner city. My mother started a cleaning service, and she was able to get us out of the inner city and get us to a more stable community, a more bigger area where we, had just, backyard and all this stuff. And so that was the thing that was keeping me out of trouble was, practicing my techniques and, being a, imaginary karate master in the backyard and all that stuff. Yep. And so she would let me get all this stuff, right? And she would let me practice and learn how to use it, because as long as it was keeping me out of trouble and I was, focused on that, she was fine with it. So I got to get a lot of stuff, like stuff that probably, a 9-10-year-old kid nowadays, shouldn't have. Yeah.
Man, I'm jealous. So do you still have any of that original stuff you bought, like in a box somewhere?
I do.
Nice.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I still have it, man. And
That's
awesome. I have, my boys. So now I have 2 boys and, and they're in, traditional Taekwondo right now. So they can get a good solid foundation. And so, we work out and stuff, and I still have all this stuff, which is really cool because it's all still there. It's good quality stuff. And, they get to see it in the practice with them. And one of my sons the other day wanted to give some of his friends like some ninja stars. And I said, hey, look, now I got to talk to the parents. We can't just give these kids this stuff, right? We don't want to go to school with like 5 ninja stars. Right? We don't need that. So let's talk to their parents. And so their parents were cool with it because they work out together. But yeah, man, it's great. I still got all that stuff. Yeah.
That is so awesome. I'm so jealous. I would have killed for a store. Like I said, we had a sporting goods store that had like 2 different kinds of nunchucks, and I think that's all they had. They didn't, not even nunchucks. They had throwing stars, and I think they had one thing of foam nunchucks, and that's it. So otherwise, it was just sporting goods. Anything else we had to like order and hope we'd get it. So.
Hey, Brian, I've knocked myself in the head many times with my nunchucks, man. Hey, working them, using them, trying to flip them back up under your arm and
Yep.
coming forward, man. Oh God, yeah, it hurts too.
That is so awesome. I love it. So then what was next? You did Taekwondo, you did Hung Gar. What was next in your
Uh-huh.
martial arts journey?
So after that, we moved to Atlanta, and I got into Hapkido, and that was really the art that I really kind of fell in love with for a while, because I really got into that. I really got into the techniques. It takes time to learn the movements, and Hapkido has a lot to do with pressure points, which people don't understand. Is that it's not just you have Aikido, which I've done some seminars with and stuff, which is really cool, but with Hapkido, I mean, it's really, you're dealing with pressure points and as well as the locks. And then there's a variation of Hapkido called Hankido, Hankido, which has to do more with circular movement. And it was originated from, what seemed to be more of a dancing style, because at that time in Korea, they weren't allowed to really practice the art. And so they had to, kind of disguise it in like a dancing style. So there's a lot of circular movement with it. And so I really fell in love with that and really learning that. And so I did that for, over a decade. And,
Oh, wow.
and just, I stuck with that. And so I've always just kind of been like just like a student of the art. It's been my thing. It's just to kind of study the different arts, because I get into the culture of the people, and just the culture of the art itself. And so, I really fell in love with Hapkido. So that's where I went after that.
So do you consider that probably your core system, since you did it for that long?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would consider that more of my core system, because with the style I learned, which came from studying with Master Moreland, Master SR Moreland, and Grandmaster Min Suk Song, taking their two variations of arts. They're both Hapkido instructors. And so that was, really where I was able to kind of create a foundation for, myself, and then fusing that with, other things that I had done after that. So I did like Krav Maga, which I really like, which is actually really cool. And I actually want to get into that more now as an adult, which I think is just a really cool art. It's really effective. And, and I just think as a martial artist, you should always learn different styles and different variations to kind of keep your body doing different movements, learning different things, and just making your art more dynamic.
Agreed. And you mentioned Krav Maga. What other styles? I know you've studied quite a few. You're kind of like me. I think I studied over a dozen styles over the 40 years I've been doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of bounced around. I researched a lot into like ninjutsu as a kid, because I was just fascinated with it. I never went to like a ninjutsu school, but I've researched that. But I would say outside of Krav Maga, I mean, like I said, I did some Aikido stuff. And then that'd be about it for me. I never really got into like jujitsu. I'm considering that at this point. It was really interesting with the Hapkido, right? I mean, the same locks that we would do. I mean, not at all comparing it to jujitsu, saying it's the same, but the locks you can do standing up, you can do on the ground as well.
Right.
I like the idea of jujitsu and like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I really like it, and I think it'll be a good workout for me. And then it's also something that, like we're saying, as a martial arts, you have to know. You got to at least be able to know, right? You got to know what somebody else is either capable of doing or attempting to do, so that you can have some kind of defense against it.
Right. So at what age, you mentioned teachings, and I know it's something you still do. So at what age did that become something you got involved? What age, what belt level did you get involved in teaching for martial arts?
I got into teaching martial arts, in my 20s. I mean, by that time, I was 4th degree black belt, and I was into it with another buddy of mine. And so that was really when I actually got into teaching. I mean, of course, when you're a black belt, you'll teach classes, right? Or you'll lead a class, right? Which you do all the time. But actually getting into it for myself, actually as a way to keep my lights on and put food on my table, I was in my 20s. And it was an interesting journey, because I always wanted to be on the business side of it. I never actually wanted to be on the mat or in the dojo actually teaching classes. That was never where I wanted to be. So it's interesting that I actually ended up there.
So think back to then, maybe as a first degree, you first helped with class, to now where you're still teaching. What do you think's changed the most about your teaching style over the years?
What's changed the most about my teaching style is what I want the students to get out of it, because I still focus primarily on youth. And so, I'll work with kids now from, school age kids, right? So that's kindergarten up to, pretty much high school. I'll do some women's self-defense classes. I do a lot of those. But with the kids, what I want them to get, of course, we want them to learn how to get the discipline, right? So I'm still big on training and being physically fit and being able to do certain things, but I have more compassion for a kid that's not able to do things that an athlete is able to do, right? Because you have some kids that are athletic, can come into a martial arts program and they might be able to do a jump front kick just as good as a yellow belt or a green belt. They may not know the technique as well, but the athletic aspect of it, they can get down. It's the development that I want them to get more now, or especially with things going on and where we are in society. So the focus, the discipline, the self-control, right? The confidence, right? Just applying it to their everyday life is what I really try to focus on with kids at the end of the day with class. It's more of the personal development side.
Okay. And then what kind of led the decision of you opening your own school, your own school, and launching your own programs?
My partner at the time, remember I said I wanted to be on the business side of it. Mm-hmm. And my partner decided he wanted to go into the movie industry. The movie industry started kicking off in Atlanta, and he wanted to be like a stunt double and, be, extras in movies and action movies and things like that. He said, man, I really think this is my passion. And so I said, okay, cool. Well, go for it, And so at first I said, okay, cool. We're just going to leave all this stuff here and I'll manage you, right? I want to be on the business side. And it didn't quite work out that way. So it's like, well, here I am. All right, I got to figure out how I'm going to make a living for myself. And I didn't have any passion to work with kids or like that. Really couldn't stand kids, to be honest with you. And I couldn't. And but it was like, all right, I got to keep these lights on. Right. I found myself in a situation where, I had lost the home that I was living in. I had to kind of start over. And I was living in my sister's basement, and it was like, okay, how do I get myself out of this? And so that was what happened. Once he left, I said, okay, I got to do something. So I started teaching. And from teaching, I started seeing the need for it because I thought there were programs all over and personal development stuff and blah, blah, blah for kids everywhere. And I saw there was a need, that there really wasn't enough. And even today, in 2023, there still aren't enough martial arts programs for kids, even though, you might think there's one on every corner. There's still not enough of them you could tell because if there were more programs, we'd have more disciplined kids in the community.
Okay. Now, do you actually have one specific physical location, or do you do pretty much programs in different places that you go to?
I do programs in different places that I go to. And what that's allowed me to do is to be able to keep the programs affordable for families, right? Because a lot of times with martial arts, in particular, it becomes very class-based. If your parents have a whole lot of extra money, right, or a lot of extra money, most times, right? You have some parents who are like, hey, look, I don't have the money, but you need this stuff. Yeah. But it tends to be class-based, where if you have extra money, then those are where your martial arts schools are. Mm-hmm. And so then the kids that typically need the discipline and the focus and the self-confidence and everything, the leadership skills and the humility, right, everything that comes from martial arts, they don't get it. And so by having programs in different areas, it allows us to reduce the costs where we have, I'm able to focus on volume, but still be able to give a quality program.
So now, did you just start with one? And if so, kind of talk about how that very first program started, and then how long before you expanded and start? Because is it over 20 you have now?
Yeah. Okay. So I started with, how the first one started was kind of by necessity. I mean, I had one location said, hey, look, yeah, you can come here and teach classes. And I saw that worked, and people came and they said, okay, this is actually a nice class. We're not going to leave. Okay, this guy may actually know what he's talking about. Okay, we'll stick around for a while. And so when I saw that, then it was like, okay, let's open up another one and open up another one and open up another one. And so I just started opening up more. And then, and that's where we got into the summer camps and things like that, opening up programs, for kids and expanding the personal development brand for kids.
Wow. That is so cool. I love that. I mean, that's just anyone who teaches with kids, because it's someone who's been in martial arts as long as I have. I know it, even though many instructors try, not all of them are good teaching kids. I think it takes a special person. And I've been lucky. The traditional Taekwondo instructor I've been with now since 1994 is amazing with kids. And, wow. If I would have stayed with the first Taekwondo instructor I was with, I would have never, ever put my kids into it. Because I tell everyone, I jokingly, but it's true. I tell everyone he's my John Kreese. I mean, he was not a nice person and drove me to the point where I hated martial arts for a while and almost quit. And luckily I met a new instructor. So yeah, I know that it definitely takes a special person to teach kids. So that's congrats on that. That's really awesome.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
So talk a little bit about, I've never actually asked a Hapkido practitioner about this. So talk a little bit about your black belt test. What kind of happens during a Hapkido black belt test?
They're all very different, right? And it's different based on the instructors. So, for example, with one, like, for example, with Grandmaster Merlin, I mean, you would do, of course, you're doing various locks, various takedowns, lots of conditioning. You're doing, but then also with him, for example, you're doing kicks and punches, and you're also doing forms that he created on his own, which were called Buddhist monk forms. That's what his variation of forms, because Grandmaster Moreland is a ninth degree black belt in Taekwondo and also a ninth degree black belt in Hapkido. Okay. So what he did, that's actually where the Hapkido influence came from. And so what he did is he fused all that together in his classes and also in his tests. So in a person's mind, it's like, okay, how do you test doing these locks and these takedowns without hurting each other? But I mean, from being in class and practicing all the time, you learn how to fall and you learn the correct ways to fall so that you're falling and you're not hurting yourself, which makes the art so effective. Is that the people that you would have to use it against don't know those falls and those takedowns. Right. But in those tests, I mean, a few hours, right? And you're working on your locks, different locks. You might locks from a punch, from a wrist grab, 2-arm wrist grab, choke holds, whatever. And you would work those techniques. And then we may go into, we would do sparring and stuff, or, kicks and punches and things. And I mean, that was what our tests were like. And sometimes those tests would be over a series of days. Oh, okay. So you might have, a test one day, and then you would come back and do something else the next day, and then something else the next day. And they were very challenging because that was just the way that he was, where it was a very challenging test. With Grandmaster Song, for example, his test would be same kind of variation of things where you would work on your locks and work on those takedowns, but you wouldn't do as many kicks and punches. That really wasn't involved. It was more about, because of Grandmaster Song, was more about the pressure points, right? Are you able to actually do this lock? It's one thing to do a lock and take a person down, but are you actually hitting those pressure points to get the actual effect that's supposed to come from the lock? Because, someone, a guy 300 pounds, or a guy, jacked up and muscle, you have to actually have the right angle to actually, for that lock or technique to work. So he was really big on the technique and the movement, because Grandmaster Song he was a trainer for the protection unit for the ROK Army for the president of South Korea. So he was real big on making sure that those techniques were right. So they were both equally grueling tests in different ways. Yeah.
Wow. In your system and the style you trained in, if let's say you didn't pass the first time, how long do you have to wait before you can retest? And I've talked to so many people, so many styles, and it's been anywhere from 1 month to a year where you had to wait to retest your black belt test if you didn't pass the first time.
Yeah. I mean, you would definitely have, so you mean in my system?
Yeah.
Well, the way I do it with my system, since I particularly work with youth, is I do it differently. Yeah. So with youth, the thing is that you don't test until you're ready.
Right.
Right. So because with kids, the job is to build their confidence and not take it away. So, I've had kids that will come to a test and they don't put forth the effort. Mm-hmm. Right. And when they don't put forth the effort, then normally they don't know the technique. Then, yeah, for that particular kid, they may wait a month. They may wait a month and a half until they're at the point where they're showing that they know the technique and that they're actually putting forth the effort before they retest. But the way that I do it with kids is that by the time they get to their belt test, they're ready for it.
Right.
And I do it that way because I want them to have the confidence. And I want them to, because a belt just jacks up a kid's confidence so much.
Yes.
That when they don't get it, it usually has to be a real reason that kid didn't pass that test, which is normally that they show up and they don't put forth any effort. They don't try, or they don't show that they're proficient at that level, or at least somewhat proficient. Because again, we're dealing with kids, we're dealing with development, we're dealing with different athletic abilities. So what I've learned to do with my kids is I'm really looking for different things in different children, which puts a challenge on the instructor because you have to know your students. So you can't have like a belt factory, right, where you're just throwing out belts with these kids just because you're making money. You actually have to know, okay, well, what is, John's strength and his weaknesses? Okay, John's kick may not he may not have improved his kick that much, but his key ops are better, right? Or his comp, he's walking in, his head is up, he's showing more focus, he's getting better grades at school, right? Like how is the art actually transcending in other areas for this kid, as opposed to the jock that comes in that plays football, basketball, baseball, right, and has all the athletic ability, right? But they may need focus. And so that's kind of how I've done it, so that we're building their confidence. So that means that I don't test kids as much.
Okay.
Right. So some schools will test, every 90 days. Some will do it every 60 days. For me, they might get 2 tests a year. Right.
Okay.
But, they're ready to go. They're proficient at their art. And then, of course, because they're not testing as much, they're going full rank, full belt changes, as opposed to, kind of half belting them sometimes. And of course, that's depending on the kid as well.
Yeah. Okay. So do you know how many students you've brought to black belt? Do you keep track of that?
Yeah, so I've brought, at this point, I mean, it's not a ton, like about 25 kids.
Hey, that's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I was reading, there was a grandmaster I was reading about one time, created his own style and taught for like 40, 50 years, and it brought less than 100 people to black belt.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you got your black belt from them, you earned it, and you deserved it. So that was a cool way to think about it.
Yeah, you really earned it. Yeah.
So have any of, like you said, you've been doing this over 20 years now teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Now, have any of them stuck with it as adults? Do you keep track with the ones as they get older and stuff? Have quite a few stuck with martial arts?
Yeah, I have a few that have. Just, I've gone to college and, coming back from college, and they're, somewhere teaching martial arts in a different city or somewhere. And so I do have kids that have stuck with it.
That's awesome.
Which means a lot. Yeah, it's really cool because, especially for kids, most kids don't get past their yellow belt, right? They go yellow, they might go green, and after that, they're like, forget it. A lot of them are like, okay, I'm not a Power Ranger, in 2 months, this is for the birds. But what I've learned with kids is that martial arts is like a seed. So you plant it when they're young, then they may go 5 years without ever doing it. They might do it again once they get to high school, or once they get to college or become an adult.
Yep.
And then it kind of sprouts again, like, oh man, I remember doing this, and I should really do this, get some self-defense, get some fitness. And so that's kind of how martial arts is. It's a lifelong journey. And so, yes, I've seen kids, become adults and, go back to doing martial arts, or come back, and I see them now. They may not be doing martial arts, but they're doing something else. And they'll come back and say, hey, man, I really appreciate it, blah, 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 blah. Especially a lot of kids I have with the summer camps and stuff, because the camp started as a martial arts camp.
Okay.
And then, blossomed into something else. And so, it's always cool to see kids that are coming back from college, and doing all kind of things, or teaching, it's really cool.
Is that Camp Warrior King?
It is.
Okay. Talk a little bit about that, kind of how that started and what that's about.
Yeah, man. So Camp Warrior King is a personal development camp that's all about exposing kids to activities they normally wouldn't experience during the school year. And so, we're taking them fishing, we're taking them hiking, we teach them how to hunt, we take them spelunking, they're going on all kind of field trips, they're horseback riding, boxing, of course we have martial arts, baking, cooking, anything that they want, just giving them some exposure. Because what we've learned is that, if kids have exposure to things, then they have an alternative to, getting in trouble.
Right.
And so that's where Camp Warrior King came from. And really the need, what happened is that during the summertime, the numbers would drop in the program.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right, because kids are on vacation, people are gone. And it's like, okay, how do we keep this from happening? And so, a friend of mine one time said, hey, look, you should do like a camp. And so at first I'm like, of course, I'm still like not really wanting to work with kids, right? I'm like, I'm teaching these martial arts and not too much wanting to work with these kids. And I said, all right, I'll do a camp for a week. And so I did a spring camp for a week and went very well. The parents liked it. And they said, okay, what about summertime? And I said, all right, I'll give you another week for the summer. And they're like, no. They're like, man, if you're going to do a camp, like we need at least a month or more. And I was like, a month or more? You got to be kidding me. I don't want to work with these kids for an hour or two. Now you want them all day, you know what I mean? So, but I ended up doing it. And, Camp Warrior King's been open for 10 years. And, we've had, just thousands and thousands of kids come through the camp. A lot of them have been kids that started in the martial arts program or come from one of the martial arts schools, and they'll come to camp. And so it's an opportunity for them to have a great time and to get those other personal development skills. Because what I started seeing, Brian, in the classes was that these kids need more than what they're just getting from the kicks and punches, right? Or what they're getting from being in class once or twice a week. They need more personal development, right? They need to understand that they need to wear deodorant and brush their teeth regularly or be respectful at home, right? And we can't teach that in a class and also teach, a form, a kick, a punch, a block, whatever. And so that was kind of where Camp King came from. And, it took off.
That's so cool. So do they do kayaking or canoeing?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, they do. Yes, we do whitewater rafting at camp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I've never done that. I've loved kayaking, but I've never done whitewater rafting. That's cool.
Bro, go. If you ever get a chance to do it, man, go, man. We take the kids every year. We go whitewater rafting. They have an absolute blast. It's just a great experience for them. At first we had to get the parents on board, but, the people we have been really safe. And, the kids, of course, have on life jackets and helmets and all that. But we have a blast, man. Yeah.
That is so fun. I love it. If I had something like that when I was a kid, I would have been all over that.
Yeah, man.
We had one teacher in high school, not quite like that, but it was my senior year. And we had a class that we could take called Community Environment Involvement. And what it was, I think it was only seniors. And it was the last 3 hours of our school day. It was one class. And it was just three teachers. It was basically the three coolest teachers in high school. And we went around like the city and we did like water testing and stuff. And we did all these different things. But on like the final thing, we did this like 2-day thing where they invited the elementary school kids. The teacher had this cabin by the river, by the Mississippi River. And we went out there, we taught them like, camping stuff and like how to start fires with 2 sticks and kayaking in the river and everything. And it was so much fun. And I talked to someone in my hometown, like, they quit that program a few years after you guys graduated. That was so sad. It was such a cool thing, but that's anything you can do with that with kids and have fun like that. Just what a achievement.
And they always remember it. That's the kind of stuff they remember. That's the stuff you remember from when you're a kid, like doing that kind of stuff, right? And that is what we want them to continue to do, right? So that when they get to college or, military or career or trade school or whatever, that they're like, man, I remember hiking, I remember kayaking, I remember fishing, I remember whitewater rafting. Man, I love that. I want to do it again, right? And then they have those extra skills or hobbies or interests,
I was over 30 years ago for me, and I remember it like it was yesterday. So
you see what I mean?
Yep. That's so cool. Now, you mentioned you had 2 sons that were also involved in martial arts. So what ages and how long have they been doing that?
Oh man. So, of course with, their dad being into it, they started once they start being able to walk. So, my kids are young though. I have my oldest is 9, my youngest is 6.
Okay.
And so, when they were old enough, I put them both in dough box, partially because it was just cool to see. I just want to see what my kid looked like in the uniform, right? Because it's like, it's your kids, you're kind of living through them, right? Or seeing yourself twice. And so, right now, actually, what's interesting is that my youngest son is a red belt and my oldest son is a high blue, so a blue-red stripe. And it's interesting because my youngest son got interested in it and started before my oldest. So, which is really kind of interesting, even though I started training my oldest son, of course, when, first. And then what I did is I said, okay, I want them to learn, just get foundation, right? Traditional Taekwondo, get a foundation. And then, I'll allow them to start moving over to different things. But they like it. And one of the things I've done with them is kind of keep them where I don't want them to burn out. I think that's the thing that happens to kids a lot.
Yes.
Is, they go 2-3 times a week and it's cool maybe the first 6 months, maybe the first year because they're really getting into it. But once they start finding other interests, if you're not careful, martial arts takes up all your time. So as a kid, if you want to play basketball, well, basketball's twice a week. Martial arts is a twice a week commitment or more. How do you get them to stay with it over time and still do the other thing? And so what I've learned is that, okay, if you reduce the amount of time they're there, it's okay if sometimes they're only going once a week because they're going to do it over the course of however many years, right? In martial arts, you never really stop.
Yeah.
I've done it with my kids, and so I kind of like it because I'm kind of hesitant on, you're 6 years old and you're, second degree black belt or something like that. It's like you have the belt, but you don't really have the knowledge.
Right.
And so you just have to be careful with that, with kids and stuff. But so. Yeah. That's just my own take on it.
I agree with that because like the system of Taekwondo I do, we have junior black belts. They can't get their adult black belt till a certain age. Before that, they're considered a junior black belt. And where we have other schools that I've been to that where a 9-year-old gets a black belt and they're considered the same rank as an adult who's a black belt. And I don't see that.
I don't get it.
Yeah,
I don't see it. It's like you're 9 years old and you're like I said, a second or third degree black belt, and it's like I don't have. A normal kid that's 9 years old, like you are, and may not have any knowledge of martial arts, if he's just a tougher kid, right, is going to hand it to that other kid that has this black belt on and this, right, because it kind of gives a sense of confidence that it's, the confidence is great.
Yes.
And the ability, right? You might have been able to show that you're proficient in a particular kick or a particular punch, but unless you're at tournaments or you're sparring or you're doing something regularly, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, let them get a little older, let them hold on to that a little bit so that they have a reason to stick with it.
Yeah. One thing my instructor told me, so my instructor right now is the 8th degree. His instructor is the 10th degree. And one thing he told me like 20 years ago that has always stuck with me, we had this conversation about kids and junior black belts. And he said, according to his instructor, what he was told when he was younger, that no matter what in traditional Korean culture, children never outrank adults. So if you have a kid who's a black belt and an adult who's an orange belt, that adult is considered a higher rank because he's an adult, and it's a respect thing. And that's one thing about, anytime people brought that up, I kind of explain that. And yeah.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, absolutely. And that's important because it's because of respect, right? I'm not gonna, there's no way that I will walk in and I'm an orange belt as an adult and I got to bow to this snot-nosed 8-year-old kid because he has a black, you gotta be kidding me, right? No, he's still an adult, right? So that's 1,000% correct. Yep.
So talk a little bit about the You Can Have It All magazine. I was reading about that before we were chatting, and that sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, man. You Can Have It All magazine is all about motivating kids to go after their dreams in spite of the circumstances. And the thought behind the magazine, we have, first of all, it's, you have a couple magazines out there that are built for kids. You have Time for Kids, right, which is pretty much about current events.
Yep. You
have National Geographic, it's animals, and you have Sports Illustrated. There's really wasn't anything out there that kind of was more of a holistic approach that it talks about, self-care, there's comics, fashion, there's kid appropriate entertainment, there's sports and wildlife and all these different things, like food, all these things kids are interested in. And we put it in a magazine so that kids could be able to enjoy it and be motivated by seeing other kids doing really cool things around the world. So the magazine is in 9 different countries. And so it's Australia, Malaysia, Taiwan, Uganda, South Africa, the UK, Dominican Republic, Trinidad, Canada, and the United States. Wow. And of course, it's, sprinkled around the US. And it's all about motivating these kids. And so the premise behind it, what really came is that where it started was that, we have Camp Warrior King and we've done this martial arts stuff. It's like, how do we get this to more kids around the world? These personal development things that we're doing, how do we get more kids to see it, to be motivated by it? And so the magazine was the way that we did that. That's been our avenue to get more motivation out to youth. And so that's where You Can Have It All magazine came from. So the app will actually launch next week. I'm really excited about that. I put a lot of work into that. So that kids can have a physical version at their school or if they want it at home, but then they can have it in their tablets and their phones. And I know that we're trying to get kids away from tablets and phones,
right?
But I don't think it's going to happen because everything is still leaning towards that direction of technology. And so it's like, okay, well, let's get something positive in there so that if they are on their phone, they can get something positive that they're actually into, and it will, make a difference in their life.
Oh, first of all, I love that you're doing the physical magazine because so many magazines have quit printing physical and gone strictly digital. And I love holding an actual magazine in my hands when I read it.
Yeah. And it's cool to have it. Right. But it's just, the kids being able to see it and flip the pages and being able to put posters on their wall because that's important because, kids are visual, right? And they need to be able to see, something on the wall that says, see it, believe it, do it, right? Or, today's going to be your best day or just anything that they can see because that's what gets them going, just like it does for us. But if you're kids in a room and there's just nothing but 4 walls, right? There's nothing in their bathroom. They can't see something, then it's a problem. Just like, because if you can't see it, right, out of sight, out of mind is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges with books and digital books is that it's hard to get a child to read if they don't see a book. But if they see books, right, like people that have bookshelves in their home, there's a greater chance for their child to read a book because they're going to see the book and pick up a book when they're bored, right? Yep. I'm bored. Hey, go over there and pick up something to read. So the physical versions are extremely important. You can't get away from that.
All 3 of my kids by like 5th grade were reading at like a senior high school to college level just because books have always been a big part of my life. And that's my only downfall about doing this podcast. I used to read a book a week. And then once I started the podcast, I just don't have the time. So it's kind of depressing, unfortunately, because I love reading. but it's like,
Yeah, man.
and actually I do own a Nook. And the whole reason I bought a Nook is because I used to travel so much, because I worked in the travel industry, and it got to the point where I was bringing like sometimes an extra duffel bag just full of books to read, like on the plane and in the hotel. And I'd bring like sometimes 8-9 books with me. And then the Nook came out. I'm like, I'm just going to try it. And it was actually kind of nice. I could throw 30 books on my Nook and
nice.
not have to exactly, not have to bring a whole suitcase of books with me. So kind of nice.
I know that's right. Yes, sir. I've tried to get into audiobooks a little bit more so that I can still get it, but it's just hard to. I'm an underliner, man. I'll underline, I'll highlight, or I might read something multiple times. Like, I might read a paragraph more than once, right? Like, I'm real big into like sci-fi, like Star Wars. I love reading Star Wars books, and I have to, like, to read a Star Wars book for me, I have to get totally immersed, right? I got to get into the world.
Yeah.
So if it talks about a particular character, man, I got to look that character up, and I need to be able to see it. And that helps me visualize the world that I'm in as I'm reading. And so if it's a story, like I read one about, Bane, right? And Darth Bane, and just kind of the moves he would do. And I'm like, I might read that paragraph 2 or 3 times just to kind of get the idea.
Yes.
Right. And so with digital, I mean, you could do that, but it's just not the same. Or with audio, it's definitely not the same. You got to rewind it 4 times. I mean, so
yeah. I like having the voice that I hear in my head, because if I've read one book and then I get another one and it's an audiobook, I'm like, well, that's not what I thought it sounded. I'll be focusing on that. It doesn't sound like I thought it would. Like when I was a kid, I'm a huge Star Wars fan too. But when I was a kid, I had a Star Wars book that came with a record. And the whole reason I liked that one as an audiobook was because it was the characters who were in the movie actually reading the book. So it was R2-D2 and C-3PO and Luke's, Mark Hamill reading it. And that was cool when it's those characters. But if it's just a straight book, no, and the same thing. And I do professional voiceover. I have friends that record audiobooks for a living, and I've never listened to one of them. I can't, I can't do it.
So. Yeah, it's different, man. It's different.
So I got to ask, since you lived in Seattle for a while, maybe you were too young when you were there, but did you, as a martial artist, did you ever get to visit Bruce Lee's gravesite?
I did. Yes, absolutely.
It's on my list. I've never got to. I've never been to Seattle. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah, man. I mean, I have. It was. And as a kid, kids are like, "You want to do what? You want to go visit Bruce Lee's gravesite?" It's like, yeah, absolutely, bro. Like, do you know who this is? Like, this is the Bruce Lee, But yes, sir. Yes, I have. Yeah,
that's cool.
It's really, really cool. And it's actually a big park that had. Seattle's changed so much since I was there.
Yeah.
But it's at a big park in central Seattle, right down from what used to be called Group Health Hospital. Okay. I'm not sure what it's called now, but yeah. It's right there.
Yeah, nice. I believe it's Lakeview Cemetery is where it's actually at. So
Lakeview, that's it.
I'm hoping my goal is in the next 2 to 3 years. I want to get out there. We'll see if I can make it happen.
That's it.
All right, so you've primarily been a traditional martial artist most of your life. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on like MMA and the UFC? Is that something you're a fan of?
For me, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a fan. I haven't really got into it. I think that the guys that do it takes an incredible amount of athletic ability and grit and will to do it. I admire and respect the amount of level of training and discipline it takes to be a UFC person or to be an MMA person. Like I think it's a great arena for guys to be able to compete and just to, at that level. I think that it's amazing. I like that it's not as gruesome as it used to be. That it's kind of gotten more competitive, but I think that, it's given a lot of guys and women, right? A lot of people a lot of purpose in their life, right? Like anything that's going to give people purpose and have them focused on something positive and be able to channel their passion, I think is great. And so, for me, it's not necessarily my bag of tea just because I wouldn't necessarily want to be getting kicked in the face and all that for a living every day. But for the people that have that level of grit and that are cool with that, because you got some real like bad guys and girls out there, man, that's doing some real amazing stuff. And I'm like, man, go for it. Live out your dream, right? So like I said, for me, I wouldn't have been a guy that went and did MMA or did, a class or, competed at that level. That wouldn't have been my style. For me, it was more for self-defense. But, my hat's off to anybody that sees that and says, hey, I want to be a champion. I'm like, go for it.
Nice. So in all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy you've learned that rises to the top? You keep coming back to it. It's super important to you.
Yeah. And ironically, it comes from Bruce Lee, which is just be water, right? Nice. Just be like water. Yep. Because it transcends to life. And I think that it transcends with martial arts, right? It's just like right now, like we were talking about earlier about different martial arts and stuff that I'm interested in now in learning, that's being like water, like jujitsu is a big thing, and like mixed martial arts is a big thing right now. And so it's like, hey, man, hey, if that's what's going on in 2023, get into it. You can only benefit from it. You know, the stretching, the learning the different techniques, the challenging your mind, and then that transcends to life, right? It's just being like water, man, just being able to pretty much adapt and go with things. But then at the same time, water is very, very, very forceful and necessary. And so, you know, that philosophy as it pertains to martial arts has been something that has really, really, really stuck with me in my life.
I like it. All right. I have some fun questions to wrap it up. Now, this one doesn't have to be exactly 4. I've had people give as few as 2 and as many as 8. So it's kind of up to you, but 3, 4, 5 names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
I used to only ask for one name, and I switched it to Mount Rushmore because people kept giving way more than one. So
yeah, that's hard because there's so many. Oh man. Famous people. Okay, we're talking about famous people.
Well, I've had people list only their own instructors. I've had people list only people they've trained with, only people they know. I've had people only list celebrities. It's completely up to you. I mean, obviously, like Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris are the 2 most picked ones,
probably most picked
hands
ones,
down. And there's other ones people pick people I've never heard of, and you know, so it's completely your call.
Sure. Hey, I'll give you, for me, just like the people that I think shaped my love for it. If I did it that way, right? Just people that shaped my love for it, especially as a kid. I would say just my love for martial arts as a kid. I would have to say, of course, Bruce Lee as a kid, but I'd have, you know, like Jim Kelly.
Nice.
I'd have to say Sho Kosugi, and who actually was never studied ninjutsu, which is interesting.
Yeah, I know.
Which was a whole revelation for me when I realized that. I was like, what?
Me too. Yep.
Like, why? You gotta be kidding me. Like, he was the only ninja that ever was. What do you mean? Like, he was the master. What are you talking about? Like, this is all TV? Like, you gotta be kidding. Then we'd have to go with, my gosh, okay, Shaun, here. Those 3. I love, of course, I mean, you love Chuck Norris, but I think for a lot of us, once we saw Chuck Norris get beat up by Bruce Lee, it was kind of like, but he had to, right?
Yep.
Bruce Lee's movie. And I don't necessarily know if Bruce Lee would have got Chuck Norris like that in real life. It might have been pretty hard because Chuck Norris was a cold dude. But then you also got people like Billy Blanks, did a lot of movies. Michael J. White is another one. Just for guys that just kind of like real martial artists that really like did these really cool things for me as a kid. Watching that, Steven Seagal got me into like wanting to learn like these like locks and stuff like that, which is when I found Aikido. I was like, okay, that's the closest thing to Steven Seagal, because my issue with Aikido was there were no kicks and punches, and it's all a defensive technique, which is still hella effective. You know what I mean? But I just wanted to be able to kick somebody and then break their arm. You know what I mean? Kind of overkill with where I was as a kid. You know, like, you know, those would be mine. I mean, Bruce Lee, Jim Kelly, Michael J. White, Billy Blanks, Chuck Norris, Sho Kosugi. If I had to pick one that influenced me the most as a kid, and then, oh God, I know you didn't ask for that, but it would be right up there with probably like Sho Kosugi would probably be the one. Because as a kid, I wanted to be a ninja. You know what I mean? Like, that was just every Halloween, that's what I was. I was always outside, like crawling through some mud or doing something like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's something I just thought of. As a Bruce Lee fan and a Jim Kelly fan, did any of your local theaters show Enter the Dragon this summer for the 50th anniversary?
You know, if they did, I didn't know about it because I was working at the summer camp.
Man, okay.
But I love the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I absolutely love the movie. Yeah, man.
That was the first time I ever saw it on the big screen. I had never seen it on the big screen before, so that was quite an experience.
I know it was, man. Like, I can only imagine what that was like. I mean, the only time I've ever even seen it on a big screen like that was probably in Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. In that scene when they're in the movie theater.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That would be cool. That would be cool to go watch. I want my boys to watch some Bruce Lee stuff.
And my son asked to go with me. When I said I was going, my 19-year-old said, "Can I go with?" I'm like, "Yes, you can."
Like, yes, you can. Like, let's go. Like, absolutely.
Yeah, that was
get
cool.
Into it.
All right.
Yeah, man.
Do you have a favorite martial arts book?
Oh, man. Oh, and it's, I hate to even say that it's a favorite book, and I can't remember the exact name of it. So right now I'd have to say no, because I know the book that inspired me so much.
Okay.
But I'm almost embarrassed to say that it inspired me so much, because I can't remember the exact name of the book, but I've read it several times.
You're not
So
the
I have to
first, so
come
don't
back
feel
to it.
bad.
Okay, great.
Other
That
people
makes
have
me feel
forgotten
good.
them too.
But it was just a book that at the time was so impactful in just learning how to be an instructor, perfect instructor, perfect class. I got to get it to you. Like, I got to send it so that maybe in the notes, because it's a great book for anyone that wants to be an instructor. Like I said, I'm embarrassed I don't know the exact name of it, but I still have the book. I've read it probably a half a dozen times and highlighted it, and because there's a quote in there that really made a difference in my life. And as far as my teaching, and what he said was that when you know that he said there's a train stop when a dog is barking on the side of the road, and he said no, the train doesn't stop, the train keeps going. And so he said it doesn't pay attention to the barking and the noise, and it was equating it to a person that when you know you're doing the right thing and that you're helping even the weakest of the people in the community, which are the children, you keep going and you do what it is that you know that you need to do. And that was really important, because I struggled with the confidence of, can I teach a class?
Okay.
Right. And I struggled with that for a while. Right. Can I do this? Am I doing it right? Are they learning? You know, are they getting it? Am I the right person for this? And so I struggled for a while. And so reading that book really helped me out. So I need to get you the name of that.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool.
Because Happy Student, Happy Life. I want to get it for you, so that maybe we could put it in the notes.
Cool. How about a favorite martial arts video game? Were you ever a gamer?
Absolutely. I would, man. So, we can go with, of course, I saw the first Street Fighter. I remember when Street Fighter first came out. Shinobi, oh my goodness, was really good. You have, Street Fighter. You have, what's the one with, golly, I'm like, my brain, I need to take some more.
Tekken, Mortal
Ginseng
Kombat.
Or something. Tekken was good. There you go.
Yeah.
Tekken. Because Tekken was a big arcade game.
Yeah.
Tekken was the one that I really, really liked. Really, really loved Tekken. Really loved Tekken.
Cool. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Yeah. So, I mean, I came from like the Kung Fu, the Legend generation.
Yeah.
David Carradine.
Oh, yeah.
When he first started. I mean, so, watching that was pretty interesting. Chuck Norris was the one that was pretty much on TV at that time when I was a kid, like, Texas Ranger and all that.
Yep.
Then there was one with Ernie Reyes Jr.
Sidekicks.
There we
Loved
go.
it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to get Ernie on the show. He said yes. I just got to get him scheduled, but I'm hoping that, because Disney owns that show, so I'm hoping they'll stick it on Disney Plus one of these years and can rewatch all the old episodes and stuff. So it would be cool.
Do that, man. That would be crazy. Yeah,
it would be awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, get Ernie Reyes, man. Let me know when you do that one.
Oh, definitely, for sure. How about a favorite martial arts movie?
Favorite martial arts movie would be Revenge of the Ninja with Sho Kosugi.
Nice. I actually had Keith Vitale, who was in that movie.
Wow.
was on my show. Yeah, he's one of my guests. So yeah, he talked about that, talked about his death scene in that movie and stuff. So yeah, he said his kid made fun of him for his death scene and everything. But yeah, that was a good interview. You'd probably enjoy that one.
Man, wow. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, final martial arts question. Now, this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie, just a favorite movie fight scene.
Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee.
Yeah. Nice.
When he's, oh my God, the all-time best fight scene, hands down, is Enter the Dragon fight scene, right at the point where it's the last one where he's in the tournament, he's training, and then he gets out on the floor and he just goes crazy on all the guys. Yeah, that's the all-time. That right there put him way up there, man. Like that, like Enter the Dragon, like hands down. Still, I would have to see something else that was like, because to me, I would say everything else was fake. Right, like we know that scene is fake, but like everything else is fake. Like Bruce Lee was doing that for real. Like he really could have done that in real life. Is how it makes you feel, right? Yeah. Like he was the only person on the planet that could have kicked guys like that many guys. He's the only person beating 40, 50 guys like that by himself. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, yeah. So that would be my all-time favorite scene, man. That with the nunchucks and it's just bro.
That's awesome.
I mean, I got Bruce Lee stuff now.
Hey, I like it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if you're a soccer, I'm not really a soccer fan, but if you're a soccer fan, the pro team in Seattle this year, their jerseys are like inspired by Bruce Lee this year because of the 50th anniversary. Yeah, one of my other guests told me about it.
I gotta look that up.
Yeah,
who's the soccer team in Seattle? I'll just look it up.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up too. I don't remember. Just pro soccer team Seattle, and just Google Bruce pro soccer team Seattle Bruce Lee, and you'll find the jerseys. They're kind of cool. I'm tempted to order one, even though I don't like soccer.
Right? Yeah, I don't like soccer at all. But if it's Seattle and it's Bruce Lee, I'm like, I kind of feel obligated.
Yeah. You know? There you go. All right. So curious then, kind of final question, 2-part question.
Yeah.
You've done so much stuff. Any possible interest or anything in the future of you possibly writing a book or hosting your own podcast with everything you've been involved in?
I've written a couple books on youth development.
You have? Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
I did not know that. Okay.
Not necessarily as it pertains to martial arts, but it's more about development. I talk about martial arts in it, and just how it, helped shape my life and give me structure. As far as a podcast, I have found that I enjoy being on podcasts more than actually running it and doing one, just because I'm, really kind of engulfed with like the magazine.
Yeah.
And that stuff.
That sense. You'll send me the link to your books for sure. I'll make sure, because I have links for, I think, most of your sites here, the I Am Defense site and the camp site and the magazine site, but I want to make sure I get your books out there too, so people can check them out. But so before I let you go, anything else maybe I forgot to ask or forgot to mention that we want to get out there quick?
No, man, that's it.
Cool. Awesome.
We're good, man. I'm excited. I appreciate the opportunity, man. Just for any of the people that are listening, to please check out the kids magazine. That's something that's really big on development with the kids, and we'll make sure that we have parts in there for martial arts as well, because we want to make sure that we're highlighting kids that are in the arts, because it's important. But man, check out the mag, man.
From the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you. This has been so much fun. I love hearing about you and learning about your story and stuff. And like I said, when the episode comes out, I will promote the heck out of it and put links out there and see if we can get more people interested in what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I'll definitely promote it as well, man. And Brian, I appreciate it. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you having a podcast that shares, different people's experience about the art, and just being able to bring the community together, because that's extremely important, because we can learn a lot from each other, especially as it pertains to teaching and just the experiences that we've all had. I think that's wonderful. So appreciate it, man. And thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.